I found the letters on a Tuesday morning, tucked inside a shoebox at the back of my husband's closet. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for his old baseball cap because he'd asked me to find it. The box was unlabeled, dusty, wedged between winter boots he never wore. When I pulled it down, the lid came off easily, like it had been opened many times before. Inside were envelopes, dozens of them. All addressed to Daniel Reed, 428 Maple Street, Austin, Texas. Our address. My address for the last 12 years. But the handwriting wasn't mine. It was looping and careful, the kind of penmanship they don't teach anymore. Each envelope had been opened, Reed, folded back with precision. I sat on the bedroom floor with my back against the bed and pulled out the first letter. It was dated 3 years ago. The paper smelled faintly of lavender. "My dearest Daniel," it began. "I think about that afternoon in Portland every single day. The way you looked at me in the cafe. The way you said my name like it was the only word that mattered. I know you have a life there, a family, obligations. But I also know what we have is real. I'll wait for you. I always will, yours Claire." My hand started shaking before I even finished reading. I read it again, slower this time, hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. I picked up another letter. Then another. They spanned years. Some were short. Just a few lines about missing him, thinking of him, wishing things were different. Others were pages long, filled with memories of trips I didn't know he'd taken. Conversations I'd never been part of, plans for a future that didn't include me. There was one from last month. "I know you said you need more time, but Daniel. We're not getting any younger. I've been patient. I've respected your situation. But I need to know if you're ever going to choose me. Choose us, I love you. But I can't keep waiting in the shadows forever." I sat there on the floor for what felt like hours. But when I finally looked at the clock, only 20 minutes had passed. My whole world had collapsed in 20 minutes. I heard the front door open downstairs. Daniel's voice called out, cheerful and normal. "Babe, I'm home. Did you find that cap?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat felt like it was filled with sand. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, the familiar rhythm of his walk. The creak of the third step that we always meant to fix but never did. When he appeared in the doorway, he was smiling. That smile froze when he saw me sitting on the floor surrounded by letters. The color drained from his face. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he said, "Sarah. I can explain." Those 4 words, "I can explain." As if an explanation could put my life back together. As if there were words in the English language that could make this okay. "How long?" I asked. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it was coming from someone else's body. He didn't pretend not to understand. "It's not what you think." "How long?" I repeated, slower this time. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when he was nervous or stressed. I used to find it endearing. Now it just looked like guilt. "Wu met 6 years ago," he said quietly. "At a conference in Portland. It started as just talking, just emails. It wasn't supposed to be anything. 6 years. 6 years of my life while he had someone else. 6 years of family dinners and anniversary celebrations and birthday cakes. 6 years of me believing in us, while he kept a box of love letters hidden in our closet." "The letters say you've been seeing her," I said, my voice getting stronger now, fueled by something hot and sharp rising in my chest. "That you've visited her, that you've talked about leaving." "I never actually planned to leave," he said quickly. I didn't know how to end it. She became important to me, but so are you. So is our life here." I was stuck. Stuck. He was stuck between his wife and his mistress. The absurdity of it hit me so hard I almost laughed. "Almost. Get out," I said. "Let's talk about this. Get out." He must have heard something in my voice because he backed toward the door, hands raised like I was dangerous. Maybe I was. Maybe that's what happens when you find out your entire marriage has been a performance. After he left, I called my sister Jenna. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright. "Hey, what's up? I need you to come over," I said. I must have sounded wrong because her tone changed immediately. "What happened? Are you okay? Just come. Please." She lived 20 minutes away. She made it in 12. When I opened the door, she took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. I'd been holding it together until that moment. Something about her arms around me made everything crack open. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. She held me the whole time. Not asking questions, just being there. When I finally pulled away, she led me to the couch and made me tea I didn't drink while I told her everything. About the letters. About Claire, about 6 years of lies. Jenna's face went through several emotions, shock, anger, something that looked almost like pity. That son of a... She started. Then caught herself. What are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? For 12 years. Every major decision in my life had been made with Daniel in mind. Where we lived, what jobs I took, when we'd try for kids. We'd been trying for 3 years with no success. I'd blamed myself, thought maybe something was wrong with me. Now I wondered if he'd even really wanted children with me. Or if that had been another performance. I don't know, I admitted. But I need to figure it out on my own. Without him over the next few days. I started unraveling our life together, like pulling a thread from a sweater. I opened a separate bank account and transferred half of everything. I called a lawyer. A woman named Patricia Chen, who Jenna's friend recommended. Patricia was sharp and direct in a way that I appreciated. She didn't waste time with sympathy. She just laid out my options clearly. Texas is a community property state, she explained during our first meeting. That means everything acquired during the marriage is split 50-50. The house, the savings, the retirement accounts. All of it, even though he's the one who cheated. The word felt bitter in my mouth. Infidelity can be a factor, but it's not always decisive. What we can do is make sure you're protected financially and legally. The emotional part, unfortunately, that's harder to divide down the middle. I hired her that day. When I got home, Daniel was waiting on the porch. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept. Part of me, a small stupid part, felt bad for him. I crushed that feeling immediately. Can we talk? He asked. My lawyer says we shouldn't be communicating directly. I said, which wasn't entirely true, but I didn't want to hear whatever he had to say. Sarah, please, I know I messed up. The words came out sharper than I intended. You had an entire relationship for 6 years. That's not messing up. That's making a choice. Over and over again. I love you, he said, and he actually looked like he meant it. I never stopped loving you. That might have been the worst part. Because I believed him. I believed that in his own twisted way, he did love me. He just loved himself more. He loved having options, keeping doors open. Never fully committing to anything that might require sacrifice. If you love me, you wouldn't have done this, I said quietly. Love isn't just a feeling, Daniel. It's a choice. It's showing up every day and choosing your person. You chose someone else. I walked past him into the house and locked the door behind me. Through the window. I watched him sit on the porch steps for a long time before finally driving away. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I made plans that had nothing to do with anyone else. I'd always wanted to take a photography class. Daniel had thought it was a waste of money. I signed up for one starting the following week. I'd wanted to paint our bedroom a deep blue color I'd seen in a magazine. Daniel preferred neutrals. I bought the paint the next day. Small things, but they were mine. For the first time in over a decade, I was making decisions based on what I wanted. It felt terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The photography class met on Tuesday evenings at a community center downtown. The instructor was a woman in her 60s named Margaret, who had the kind of casual confidence I envied. She talked about composition and lighting like they were old friends. Most of the class were people like me, amateurs looking for a creative outlet, but there was one guy who clearly knew what he was doing. His name was Ryan. He had the kind of camera that probably cost more than my car. And every shot he took looked professional. During our first break, he came over to where I was fiddling with my settings. You're doing it wrong, he said. Which should have annoyed me but somehow didn't because he was smiling. The aperture needs to be wider for this kind of lighting. He showed me how to adjust it, and my next shot came out significantly better. Thanks, I said. No problem. I'm Ryan, Sarah. We talked for a few minutes about cameras in the class. It was normal, casual. The kind of conversation that meant nothing and everything, because it reminded me that I could still talk to people, still exist in the world as just myself. Not as Daniel's wife. Not as half of a couple, just Sarah. Over the following weeks, Ryan and I developed a friendship. After class, a group of us would sometimes go to a diner down the street. We'd drink bad coffee and talk about our photos, our lives, nothing too deep but real enough to matter. Ryan was divorced, had been for 3 years. He had 2 kids he saw every other weekend. He talked about them with such obvious love that it made me ache for things I'd wanted but never had. One night, after everyone else had left, Ryan and I stayed at the diner talking. Somehow the conversation turned to my situation. I hadn't planned to tell him, but it came out anyway. The whole story. 6 years, he said when I finished. He looked genuinely shocked. How did you not know? I trusted him, I said simply. I believed him when he said he was working late, or at conferences, or visiting his brother. I never had a reason not to. That's not a failure on your part, Ryan said firmly. That's on him. Trust isn't naive. It's what you're supposed to do when you love someone. Something about the way he said it made my eyes sting with tears. I'd been so angry at Daniel that I hadn't processed how much I was angry at myself for not seeing it, for not being enough to make him stay faithful. Thank you, I said quietly. For what? For reminding me that I'm not the one who broke this. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand briefly. It wasn't romantic, it was just kind. And in that moment, it was exactly what I needed. The divorce proceedings moved forward with the kind of cold efficiency that made the whole thing feel surreal. Patricia was excellent at her job. She made sure I got everything I was entitled to and then some. Daniel's lawyer tried to argue that I was being unreasonable, that I should be willing to negotiate. Your client spent 6 years lying to my client, Patricia said in a meeting with both lawyers present. I think reasonable went out the window a long time ago. We ended up selling the house and splitting the proceeds. I found a small apartment near downtown Austin, close to the photography studio where Margaret sometimes taught advanced classes. It had big windows and hardwood floors and room for exactly one person. It was perfect. The day the divorce was finalized, I didn't feel sad. I felt light, like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long that I'd forgotten it was there, and suddenly it was gone. Jenna took me out for dinner to celebrate. We went to an expensive steakhouse and ordered dessert before our entrees because we could. To new beginnings, she toasted, raising her wine glass. To new beginnings, I echoed. As we clinked glasses, I realized I meant it. This wasn't an ending, it was a start. A few months later, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line said, "I thought you should know." My first instinct was to delete it. Nothing good ever came from emails with subject lines like that. But curiosity won out. Oh dear Sarah, my name is Claire Morrison. I'm writing because I feel you deserve the truth, even though it may not mean much at this point. I recently learned that Daniel told you he was stuck between us. I want you to know that from my perspective, that wasn't true. Daniel told me your marriage was over, that you were staying together for financial reasons but that emotionally you'd both moved on. He said you knew about me and had accepted it. I realize now he was lying to both of us. I ended things with him 2 weeks ago when I finally understood the extent of his deception. I'm not writing to ask for your forgiveness or understanding. I'm writing because if I were you, I would want to know that wasn't the only one he lied to. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not for what I did, I made my choices, but for what we both lost because of his. I read the email 3 times, then I closed my laptop and sat in silence for a long time. Part of me was angry all over again. Part of me felt a strange kinship with this woman I'd never met. Mostly, I felt tired. Tired of being angry, tired of thinking about Daniel, tired of letting him take up space in my head. I didn't respond to Claire's email. There was nothing to say that would change anything. But I saved it, filed it away in a folder I labeled, "The Past." That's what it was now. The past. My present was Tuesday night photography classes and weekend hikes with Jenna and morning coffee in my sunny apartment. My present was learning to be alone without being lonely. My present was mine. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Margaret invited me to participate in a group show at a local gallery. My photos would be displayed alongside work from other students and local artists. I almost said no. The idea of putting my work out there for people to judge felt terrifying. But then I remembered something Ryan had said once. The worst that can happen is someone doesn't like it. You'll survive that. So I said yes. The opening was on a Friday night. I wore a blue dress I'd bought just for the occasion, and stood nervously near my section of the wall. where 5 of my photographs hung in simple black frames. They were all shots from around Austin. A mural in East Austin at sunrise. The Capitol building reflected in a puddle after rain. An old man playing guitar on 6th Street. Nothing fancy, but they were honest. They were me. People came and looked and moved on. A few stopped to read the little cards next to each photo. One woman spent a long time looking at the guitar player photo. She smiled at me as she walked away. "Beautiful work," she said. "Thank you," I managed. Halfway through the evening, I saw Daniel. He was standing near the entrance, scanning the room. When his eyes found me, he started walking over. My heart rate picked up. But not in the way it used to. Now it was just adrenaline, fight or flight. "Sarah," he said when he reached me. "I heard about the show. Congratulations. What are you doing here? I wanted to see your work. I know I don't have the right to be here, but I'm proud of you." Proud. The word felt meaningless coming from him. "You need to leave," I said quietly. "Sarah, I just want to talk." "I don't. I have nothing to say to you, Daniel. We said everything that needed to be said months ago." "I miss you," he said, and he had the audacity to look like he meant it. "That's not my problem." Something in my voice must have finally gotten through, because he nodded slowly, turned, and walked out. I watched him go and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret. Just relief that he was leaving and I was staying. Later that night, after the gallery closed and most people had left, Margaret came over with 2 glasses of champagne. "You did well tonight," she said. "Thank you for encouraging me to do this." "I didn't encourage you to do anything," she said with a smile. "You were ready. You just needed to believe it." We sat on a bench outside the gallery, sipping champagne under the stars. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Of course. When does it stop hurting? The betrayal, the loss of what you thought your life was going to be." Margaret was quiet for a moment. "It doesn't stop," she said finally. "But it changes. It becomes part of your story instead of the whole story. You get to decide what comes next." "What comes next?" I liked the sound of that. I thought about my apartment, my photography, my Tuesday nights and weekend hikes. I thought about the woman I was becoming. Someone who made her own choices, who didn't shrink herself to fit into someone else's vision. A year after finding those letters, I stood in almost the exact same spot in my bedroom. But it wasn't our bedroom anymore, it was mine. The walls were painted that deep blue I'd always wanted. My camera sat on the dresser. Photos I'd taken lined the walls. Through the window, I could see the Austin skyline lit up against the night sky. I thought about that morning I'd found the letters, how my whole world had shattered in 20 minutes. How I'd thought I couldn't survive it. But I had. I'd done more than survive. I'd rebuilt. I'd made something new from the broken pieces, and it was better than what I'd lost because it was entirely mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "Coffee tomorrow morning. Found a new place you'll love." I smiled and typed back. "Sounds perfect." And it did. Perfect not because everything was easy, or because I had all the answers, but because I was finally living a life that was true. No more performing, no more shrinking. No more waiting for someone else to choose me. I'd chosen myself. That was the ending Daniel had stolen from me. But it was also the beginning I'd given myself. And if anyone listening to this has ever found those letters, discovered those lies, watched their life crumble in 20 minutes, I want you to know this. You will survive it. You will rebuild. And what you build will be stronger than what you lost because you'll build it on truth instead of lies. You'll build it for yourself. And that, I've learned, is the only foundation that lasts.